So your handle, how quick did it take you to get it?
Well, I got it before I ever come to Keim, and it was when I worked for Tractor Supply Company, and I was always working on setting up a store or changing a store or something, and I always had 3 or 4 guys working with me, you know, and I would go get a beer, come 5 o'clock or 4 or whatever, I would go get some beer to drink, and I'd always buy a 6 pack, and I would always grab one. They'd put it in a brown sack, and I'd always grab one out. And when I'd get back to the store, wherever we was at, there'd only be 5 beers in the sack. And so people got to calling me 5 pack, and that's how I come up with my handle. And I always told everybody, they'd say 5 pack, and I said, yeah, just like a 6 pack, only short one. And you've got to be short one to be out here in this mess.
So your first lugs.
I got in my truck, was truck number 32. It was blue. It was a Kenworth. Went to Blue Rapids, picked up a load of wallboard. At that time, they was still making wallboard in Blue Rapids. Went to Omaha, unloaded. Couldn't get my tarp folded up. Didn't know how to fold it up because nobody showed me, but I got it in the box. Went to Fort Dodge and picked up another load of wallboard and went to St. Paul, Minnesota. This was the week of Thanksgiving. Went from St. Paul over into Wisconsin and picked up a load of Christmas trees for San Antonio, Texas. And what an experience we had side kits. We took the center stake out. They put 2x4s in for the center stakes and loaded the Christmas trees on, and then put them under a press, pressed them down, and I throwed straps over them to keep them down. And I headed for San Antonio, went home for Thanksgiving one day, left out on Friday, and headed for San Antonio.
Well, now that's probably why you're teaching all the guys, how to do the tarps right.
Well, the Christmas trees, we only had to put one tarp on it. And that was the only load of Christmas trees that I ever hauled. And I forgot to tell you that when I got to St. Paul, I met 2 drivers, and one of them became one of my very best friend. His name was Alan Rule, and he went by Fuzzy. And they showed me how to fold tarps. And so I never had problems after that. Was able to get them in the box.
So would that be your best memory?
My best memory?
Yeah.
It would be right up there. Are you talking about when I met Fuzzy?
Like your whole 34 years, like the best, yeah.
Well, I've had so many different experiences. The changes, the different loads, and the equipment that we had back then, of the ratchets, we carried the ratchets for our straps in a box, and you took them off and put them on every time you changed the loads. There was no such thing as dropping and hooking with your straps uh, back then. Um,
Can you talk a little bit about your trucks that you drove throughout the years? What you start out with, what you drive?
Well, it's always been a Kenworth. Like I said, my first truck was number 32. My second truck was number 32 because at that time, when he bought trucks and you changed, you kept the same number. And I don't remember, have no idea what year they started changing and just upping the numbers and everything. But we've had all different kinds of engines, different transmissions, you know, from 15 speeds to 9 speeds to, uh, uh, the 13 speeds. Drove they were all T680s at that time. And then somewhere in I think it must have been in the 90s or something, he bought those. I think there was 15 or 20 W9s that he bought from Kenworth that some of us had. I had a T2000, and that was back in must have been the early 90s, and that's when that they had a deal or a contract with Cummins, and we were a test company or test driver for the new Cummins engines, the 600. I had one of the original 600 that they tested. Matter of fact, when we got it, we couldn't even open the hood at a truck stop. It was chained down with a padlock, so nobody could see this engine because it was all top secret. And it had all kinds of, I had a phone back then that I could talk to them. They talked to me every single day, and I could use it to call customers, which become very nice and everything.
So you had a cell phone before other drivers had a cell phone?
I guess you could call it a cell phone, yes. Yeah. And I had it for, I think it was probably 3 or 4 years that we tested different engines, and then they took it away from me, and I didn't have a cell phone. I was right back to, to the beginning. And speaking of phones, the changes that I've seen over the years is that when I started, you would go into a restaurant, and that's back when they had real restaurants. All of your major truck stops, your TAs and your Petros, and all of them would have a phone at the table. And back then, more times than not, there would be 2 or 3 of you together, because our loads that we had, there would be anywhere from 2 to 5 loads going to the same location. And we would stop and eat, and you would have to call in, and we had Connie was the operator. She would answer, and she knew who your dispatcher was, and so she would connect you to your dispatcher, and you had to wait, just like I think the guys do nowadays. It hasn't changed. It's never been, a give and take. Some days it was fast, other days it wasn't. Also, back in those days, you called in 7 days a week. You called in on Saturday and Sunday, whether you was on the road or whether you was at home. You let them know where you was at, what was going on. Also, the shop was open on Sundays. Also, you could get things done on Sunday if you needed it to. Uh, so uh, it was just a different time, different world than it is nowadays. Um Trucking was so much more fun back then. We had fun. We enjoyed each other. Our communication was through your dispatcher and with your CB. And we used the CBs, to talk with other drivers. And we used them so much for uh, uh, finding locations.
Talking on the, you guys had fun and everybody worked together. Can you talk about that a little more on, helping each other with loads and
Sure.
driving
Camaraderie.
together?
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Because you didn't have the connections back home. You only had the road.
The when I said that, we had fun, yes, it was work, just like it is nowadays, but everybody would help each other out. Uh, the Out of Kansas City, uh, they had we had Payless Cacheways that we hauled for, and almost every store you went to every day, you would have 3 to 4 loads going to the same location, and everybody would help everybody. Uh, Even Rick Hubbard would help you once in a while, but he'd always call in before he got unloaded. He was always the first one unloaded, whether he was unloaded or not, and it was just what it was, and we dealt with that. But also back then, if you had a breakdown out on the road, it might not be one of your drivers, but you would not be sitting on the side of the road for over 10 or just a few minutes, and there would be another truck driver that would stop or would be on the CB seeing if you needed help. Nowadays, I think they try to run over you. So it's just so much different. The drivers back then, um, everybody looked out after each other. And when you was in a city looking for a location, you had no problem of stopping in the street or along the side of the street, putting your four ways on, jumping out and running into a business and say, hey, have you heard of this place, or do you know where this place is? And for the most part, if they knew, they would tell you how to get there, how to find it. Uh, uh, you you didn't have a cell phone, you didn't have a GPS. Uh, you would always call your customer ahead of time and get directions into the place. And they knew how to give directions. They didn't ask you, don't you have a GPS? They would tell you how to get there. You would usually write that in a book or on a card or something like that and saving it for the next time. And that's how, that's how we found places back then.
Why did you start out getting paid?
I got started, we had hub meters on the trucks. And so you got paid for every mile that you drove. I think, I want to say I started out probably at 14 or 15 cents a mile. And I thought, golly, I'm getting paid for every mile. And it wasn't too long after that I think in 6 months, I think I got a half a cent raise. And then I don't know, wasn't too long after that. I think we went to percentage, and then there was a couple of years, I think maybe we was all on mileage. It has changed back and forth over the years from mileage to percentage.
You didn't get paid for those tarps and side kits, did you, Gary?
Well, yes, we got paid for side kits. We got paid, I think $20 to set them up and tear them down. And we got $20. I want to say it was $20 for tarping and untarping. So yeah, we got paid for that. As I think back, it wasn't a lot, but we were happy with what we was getting paid. I remember one time when I was back on when I first started, not too long after I started, and we was getting paid off of the hub, I was in a truck stop, and I was driving around trying to find a spot, and a guy hollered at me on the CB and said, "Hey, Keim, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to make enough money. I'm going to get me a cup of coffee as soon as I drive around the lot a couple of more times." And so those were the kind of things that happened. And, guys we just done things like that. We never drove very few miles empty. We had side kits. We talked about side kits. When we would go out into Kansas to Tulsa, Oklahoma, Salina, we would always go someplace and load a load of wheat and bring back to Kansas City, to different places around Kansas City. And so we would have, we would call them taping parties or something like that, because you'd set the side kit up and then you had to take duct tape and tape around the bottom so that you didn't lose all of your wheat coming back to Kansas City. And then when you'd get back to Kansas City, you would set in the wheat line, and they picked the entire truck up on a hoist to dump you. And then when you got that done at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, you would go back to Payless Cashway and pick up your next load going wherever. They went, those loads went all over, kind of like the loads do now. But we just didn't run around empty. They wouldn't think about coming from Salina back to Sabetha empty. We'd load a load of wheat and go to Kansas City. So that the side kits, they had their advantages and disadvantages. they was loading wheat, getting the 48-foot or 50-foot tarp over was quite a job, but we didn't know any better. I mean, that's what we'd been doing, so we didn't complain about it. I'm sure we did bitch about it, that it was windy and stuff like that, but we just done it, and everybody done the same thing. And we would hear again, if there was somebody else there, we would, help each other out. We would stay around and, guys wait for an hour or so to help somebody else out because they needed the help and everything. And then we would run together and talk on the CB and hope we didn't blow out a tire or something. And that's never, everybody, other trucking companies, drivers would make fun of us because we had super singles, but it was never, to me, it was never that big of an issue. I blew out some tires, but not that many. If you checked them on a regular basis and kept them at the right pressure, they held up pretty good for what we was hauling on. There's sometimes our loads of wheat would get kind of heavy on us, so they took a lot of punishment and everything.
What's the best change you saw going from ag to flatbed? What did you guys think about it, I guess?
About
going from your milk and doing the grain and stuff to just
the milk, I didn't haul very much milk. They had guys that's all they did was run the milk and everything. And I filled in a few times. They run to Texas, is where they picked up the milk and bring it back to Sabetha, or would take it to Kansas City. I took a few loads to Kansas City. I went to Texas a few times. I took a load out of Texas to Wisconsin, to the milk state, which didn't make a lot of sense. But, in the trucking business, we haul a lot of stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, so the milk, then they closed the creamery here in Sabetha, and that was the end of that. And I think most of those guys that was hauling milk went back to flatbed, but most of them was older, and I think most of them retired, if I remember right, and everything.
Were you excited to get out of grain? I guess get out of the tarps and sidekicks.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate. Glenn, the owner at that time, tried an experiment with, I don't know, 15 or 20 drivers, and decided that there was a few of us, we would pull our own trailer and keep our own trailer all the time. And so with the side kit, where you took care of it yourself, it wasn't that bad because it was put up right and put together right, and it would go together right and everything. But it was still a hassle.
So you're saying drop trailers was still a mess back then?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it finally got down to where I think I was one of the last ones that pulled their own trailer. And what happened, or the reason that it was very difficult, is for weekends and everything, getting loaded and being able to get home. You had to wait longer, different places to get loaded and everything with your own trailer. And there was some places that uh, we hauled New Holland tractors out of Dublin, Georgia, and you had to wait for a while for them to get to you. There we had loaded trailers where it was a drop and hook and everything. But I was stubborn. I didn't want to give my trailer up. And I had to give it up when I got the uh, white W9, fancy W9. Uh, they told me that I had a choice. I could either keep my trailer or I could get that new W9. And I wanted that W9 with that 18 speed in it and had a refrigerator in it and and a sunroof. And wow, I was a trucker then. I was big time trucker then. And so that's how I ended up losing my trailer. And it wasn't too long after that they started taking the side kits off, and we run, I want to say maybe a year or so with the headboard on it. And then uh, they started taking the headboards off, and uh, we had strictly flatbeds then. And they also started buying the trailers with the ratchets already on them, and that helped out, made it a lot easier, uh, where you didn't have to bolt your ratchet on.
Or clean them
But when you put your own ratchets on, you knew you had enough ratchets. Uh, you didn't have uh, Frank and Dominic taking the ratchets off of one side and putting them on the other like they used to. I know they claim they didn't, but we all know that they did.
Like they still do.
Yeah,
Dominic, anyways.
yeah. Dominic may still be doing that. I'm not sure. Probably so. Never understood that, but that's Dominic.
Well, you went through a lot of the technology changes and updates that made the driver's job a lot easier. The phones, the equipment, the
Right.
trailers, everything.
Yeah.
So what would be your best advice for the new drivers kind of coming into the industry and then the older drivers that are still here?
Well, I don't know if I can give the ones that are still here any advice. They probably pretty well all know it.
Or act like they do.
Yeah, or act like they do it. No, a new driver, uh, I guess my advice for them is, if this is what you want to do and you need to be sure this is what you want to do. You want to be happy doing your job, but you've got to give it time. It will not happen in a month or 2 months. Uh, you've got to give it at least 6 months and then reevaluate what you have learned, because it takes that long to get to start understanding what you're really doing and how things are working out. Uh, the technology, I want to go back to the phones. Like I was saying earlier, uh, you go into a restaurant and they had a phone, and so we would all call in at the same time and go from one dispatcher to another. Then wasn't long after that, we would go into a restaurant and they would have a portable phone. Man, this was real neat and everything. And so then it went from that to the cell phone that people had.
And now
And
people don't talk anymore.
and for younger guys, with the family. Yeah, when you left, like I said, on a Sunday or a Monday, most of the time it was on a Sunday because you wanted to be at your delivery for a Monday morning. And so your family didn't, they knew which direction you was headed, but they had no idea. So you would make uh, an appointment to call on Wednesday or Thursday, whatever your day was. So you'd get you a pocket full of quarters, and at a truck stop, when you would walk in, there would be a bank of phones lined up for drivers to call. So you'd take your quarters and you'd hope they answered for you. Then they come out with the phone card, the prepaid phone card, which was just kept you from having to have so many quarters and everything. So it got better. And eventually, I can remember when Keim started with Verizon, where I think almost all of the drivers got phones through Verizon, and it wasn't very good. They You had your cell phone, but you never knew if it was going to work or not. But it got better and better as the years went on, just like technology has and everything. And the trucks uh, had, I guess they've got better over the years. Nobody can work on them now except a certified mechanic. We used to change fuel filters and do stuff and work on lights and stuff like that back in the day. But you didn't have the breakdowns that you do now. You didn't have the exhaust system. You had an exhaust and it blowed smoke, and that was a good part of it. And you could keep your truck from gelling up if you just took care of it. Kind of like nowadays, if you take care of your truck nowadays and watch the weather and keep the additives in it, it'll do you a good job. Uh, but back in the days, we put additives in it, we put gasolines in them, we done a lot of different things to keep them running. They had a crossover line. The first ones did, that you could even shut one side off and just run out of one tank. And the engines put so much heat into the fuel going back into that one tank, you didn't have to worry about it gelling up because the fuel was very warm back, with the return line going back into it. So I remember one year, I don't remember what year it was, but it was very, very cold. The wind chill was 50 and 60 below, and they had us dispatched um, together, at least two drivers together, because it was so cold. They didn't want us out by ourselves. And that went on for a couple of days, and I'll never forget that. That me and another driver, we went to, I think, Davenport or someplace like that, out of Payless Cashway, and worked together with our tarps and spent the night, making sure, checking on each other. And same thing the next day. I think they tried to find loads for us that didn't have to be tarped or anything. And so they was trying to do the best that they could for us. But that went on for a couple of days, and then we was right back. The weather warmed up like it always does and everything. But we put the tarps in the box. There was times you might have to throw it up on the deck until you got someplace where the wind wasn't blowing, or it might thaw out a little bit. But if you worked at it long enough, you could get the tarps in the box. It's just mind over matter. If you want to do it, you can do it.
So over the 10 years of you training drivers, new drivers, and the ones that came with experience, what was your one piece of advice that you wanted them to always remember?
Slow down. Slow down. Take your time. Pay attention, but slow down. Everybody's in a hurry. Everybody around you is in a hurry. But you got to remember, you're in a truck. You take off slow, you slow down slow, and you've got to drive ahead of yourself all the time. You've got to, pay attention. The minute you climb up in that truck, you better be focused on what you're doing, on your driving. Like my cards that I've got, the 5 rights. I just preached that from the very beginning. Thank you, Casey, for that. That's the neatest business card anybody ever had. But those things, if a new driver will listen to or watch that and do that, they can be safe. Yeah, accidents going to happen, but most of them are presentable.
What was your favorite thing to haul out of all the years? What was your favorite load? What was your favorite places? Stuff like that.
Oh,
Your least favorite. You got to have a least favorite too.
Yeah.
Because I want to know.
Probably one of the favorite things or easiest things is probably rebar. It usually rebar was always very easy to tie down, and I don't think I ever had a load of rebar ever move on me or shift on me. I don't know that I ever had very few loads that ever did shift on me. If you tie them down properly, they're going to stay put for you. I, when I came to Keim, I'd worked for a company out of Kansas City. We had wreckers, we had vans, and we had flatbeds, and I had pulled some oversized stuff. So it wasn't long after I came to Keim that I started pulling oversized stuff. And over the years, it was, oversized can be very challenging and aggravating, but always enjoyed that, I think, because of the challenge and everything. One of my another favorite was the machinery. I think I said earlier about those New Holland tractors that we hauled out of Dublin, Georgia. Those were very easy, and lots of times we went to California with them and loved running out to California.
Didn't you set us up at New Holland, PA, with the balers? Didn't you go out there for the first load?
I don't remember. Very possible. Milt and Raymond, there was a few places that they set up, new places, and they would send me in for the first time to kind of check it out and get acquainted. I got us set up with the artificial bricks out of Napa, California. We used to run out there, and took wire out of St. Joe to Napa, and I was setting out there one morning after I'd unloaded, and I'm looking at this brick place right across the street, and all of these flatbeds are going in. And so I just got out of my truck and walked over to the office and asked to talk to somebody, and they gave me a name, and I got a hold of Milt, and he was able to get us set up hauling artificial, I guess it's brick or stone is what it's called. And that's back when we still had side kits then also. And that became a big deal for us for quite a few years, that we would, and they went all over. They come back to the Midwest. Most of the time they come back around Denver or something like that.
So you say California was your favorite place to go take a load and come back?
Well, I enjoyed California. One reason why I enjoyed it back then is I still had that 48-foot trailer, and I was legal going out there. Then we got the 50s and the 53 foots, and so you didn't, when we got them, then you had to kind of be more careful, and you always worried about getting stopped and having to take your rear wheels off or something, and do something like that. I never did get caught or anything like that. But I didn't have, I guess I was greedy. I didn't care where I went as long as I was moving. When you want to make money, it's there to be made if you want to work. And back in those days, there would be times that we would work more than 10 hours a day. We would work a few more hours a day. We had what we called paper logs, and they were made out of paper, and you know how paper blows away, gets wet, gets dirty, and sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. Not that we ever done anything illegal, but
what's the most sheets of paper you've used on one day? Paper log wise.
In one day?
In one day.
Oh, usually you can get by with 3 or 4 without too much trouble. Depends on where you want to be.
But then at the end of the week, you might need another one because you got to move the whole week.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, the end of the week was a different story and everything. And on our back when I started, on our packet or envelope, driver's packet, whatever you want to call it, really hasn't changed that much, except when I started, you had to write down every time you crossed a state line, you had to write the miles down and turn that in. Plus, you had to write down your route on the packet. That was a change. But outside of that, the fuel, the way you put your loads down, it's pretty basically stayed the same the last 30 some years.
What's some of your least favorite loads to haul and some of your least favorite places to go?
Shoals.
Oh, what's that?
I said shoals.
Shoals was not a lot of fun. My probably least favorite loads was probably stand-up coils. Uh, is probably my one of my least favorite loads because you've got to be so careful, uh, getting them tied down, and you need to uh, drive extra careful, be extra safe when you're hauling stand-up coils because they are dangerous not only for you but everybody around you and everything. And my least favorite place to go, oh, I don't know. Uh, Probably uh,
Anywhere you had to do
some of
extra
the
purchasing.
some of the steel places around Chicago that we went to, you usually had a wait time. They just had so many trucks and everything. You spoke of Shoals. Shoals was, you just knew you was going to have to wait there and everything. But I don't guess that, when we was on paper logs, waiting was not that big a deal. Now you got to remember that I have never drove with the electronic loads. I got out of it just about the time he went to electronic loads, to the electronic logs.
Mm-hmm.
And so uh, that's when we started the school, or we started a different training program. That's when I was going to retire. I was 72 years old, and they had talked to me a couple of years in advance, wanting to know when I was going to retire. I don't know if they was wanting me to retire. I didn't know for sure what they wanted, but anyway, they kept asking me. And I remember that I was down in Arkansas, and it was about 130 in the shade, and they got me a load. They said it wasn't a tarp load, and then they called me and told me it was a tarp load. Uh, Mr. John Murchison. Um, and so, anyway, it was hot. I was tired. My back, I was hurting. And anyway, uh, I got the load, got it tarped, got back in the truck, and I had a missed phone call. And they said, Gary, that load doesn't have to be tarped. Well, uh, that truck about had another sunroof in it. And I remember calling Randy either from there or on the way, and I said, I'm done. When I get back, I'm done. I said, I'm not, I can't handle this no more. My back was in pretty bad shape, and that just, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back. And so I don't know where the load was going. I assumed to Harrisonville anyway. Uh, he got me to Sabetha and called me in the office and said, Gary, this is what Stan wants to do. Uh, and we'd like for you to start this training program. Um, what would it take and for you to do this? And I told him a figure, and he says, we can do that. And I says to myself, oh crap, I didn't ask for enough money. Uh, anyway, uh, that's where I went from driving to I guess, uh, changing the training program that we had. You know, we've always had a training program, but I went to work on, and it was just by the seat of my pants on what I thought was we should do and what, and hopefully it's turned out a few good drivers. Then Casey come to work maybe 6 months after I started this, and we became very good friends and worked together quite well, and we are still very good friends. Well, from my side anyway. Her side. Anyway, it's been 34 years. I started in 90, and if I was able, I'd still do it. Unfortunately, I'm just, you know, maybe come spring, maybe I can do something, you know, other than dispatch. They did ask me to dispatch, and I'm too old school to dispatch. I just would not be able to handle that.
Got any closing thoughts or any words of encouragement or anything, anybody you want to say anything to or anything like that? We'll get it kind
of. No, just that, you know, as a driver, you're going to always be upset. You're going to always think that dispatch is against you. They are not against you. They are trying to work for you. They want you to make money. When I started, it was so much different than it is nowadays. You know, Keim has never said that it was forced dispatch, but back in the 80s and 90s before I started, I wouldn't say you was scared of your job, but you was more concerned about your job. You know, you had a good job and you wanted to keep it. And you knew if you didn't do your job that they're going to replace you because there was drivers to be had. And I just think that we just had a different mindset than the guys do nowadays, you know. And I got upset at dispatchers, thought they didn't know what they was doing. But as a rule, most of the time, it works out for the best. You know, there'd be times that they would ask you, okay, here's your choices. And, you know, you would pick the load you would think that's the best. And chances are that wouldn't be the best load. If you'd have listened to the dispatcher, you'd have been a lot better off. And because they just know different things that as a driver you don't. And they have a plan for you, usually for the day, for the week. And if you let them do it, it'll work out. You know, I don't know of any driver that's ever been left any place that they never come up with a load for them and got them back home. And I just appreciate Keim that, you know, they put up with me for all of these years. I always tell everybody, I said, they may not be the best company, but they're one of the best. And I really appreciate that. I feel like that I done my job and they took care of me. And they took very, very good care of me.
If you could go back in time 34 years, would you do it all over again?
Yes. yes.
Wouldn't change a thing.
I had, I done a lot of different things. I had a lot of different jobs before I got into the trucking end of it. And once I got into it, I wished that I had done it years before, because I think that I was born to be a driver of some sort. Because my other jobs, I traveled a lot, and ever since I probably 2 or 3 years after I got out of high school, which was in 1960, I have traveled a lot, and I've kind of lived out of a suitcase, and that's kind of my life. Uh, Being in a truck by myself or being alone has never bothered me. And if somebody cannot handle that being alone, then trucking's probably not for you. Even though nowadays you've got all of your technology and everything, it's not like the guys never talk or see their families or anything. It's just a finger punch away to see it and everything. But yes, I would do it all over again.